Hey everybody, welcome to Sid's Little Corner of the Internet. We've got another Transformers review coming your way. This time around we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series number 8615 Dinobot Sludge. So this is Sludge as we saw him in that 1986 Transformers movie, and he looks pretty darn good. So let's go ahead and bring that packaging in. We'll take a look at that first. And right up there you've got that really cool artwork with Sludge and the Sharkticons, kicking them around, being a little rough with them. Transformers the movie, Studio Series 86, number 15. Transformers up the side. You've got that cool artwork right there. He's shooting flames. On the back, you have a big screen-inspired mockery of justice. And Dinobot Sludge breaks down the courtroom door and crashes the Quintesson trial. Backdrop is included. And down here you have all your warnings, and you have your sad baby. And the baby's sad because he doesn't like dinosaurs. I don't know why. The baby never told me why, but he doesn't like dinosaurs. Over here, 8615, there's a close-up of that beautiful face. He is a leader class. Up top, Transformers the movie. Down low, additional information. And that is it for the packaging. So let's go ahead and crack this guy open and see what came inside that box. Behold, laid out here before you is everything that came inside that box. And I do have to tell you that for a leader class, this is kind of a letdown. Especially a leader class Dinobot. He doesn't come with a lot, unfortunately. But let's go ahead and get into it. And we'll start over here. You get your little sheet of warnings. And then you do get your instruction booklet. So that leaves you with the one thing you see here, which is his gun. Now, credit where credit is due. This thing is really cool. I do like the sculpt work. I do like the color. It just looks like a big hand cannon, and I dig that for sure. So you can see the sculpt work is pretty decent. You've got that matte black, and then you do have this wonderful gold paint. It is blast effect compatible, so that's always a nice plus. And over here it's the same thing except for these two tabs right there that you can use for the weapon storage. So not a lot going on here, just a good looking gun basically. Now the only other thing that he comes with, if you want to call it an accessory, is this display base. So this is what Hasbro's been doing with all of the Studio Series figures, and it looks really cool. If you have the room, as I've stated in other reviews, I appreciate what they're doing here, but I don't have the room, so this is going to go back into the box, and the box is going to go in storage. But for those of you who have the room, perfect, use it. So that is it for everything that came inside the box. So let's go ahead and take a deep dive on Mr. Sludge here, and we'll look at his details on articulation. Here he is, that lovable but dim-witted quadrupedal prehistoric herbivore we've all been waiting to see. This is the leader class Dinobot Sludge. So let's go ahead and bring him in, and we'll start up here at the head. And it looks good. I have no complaints whatsoever. This just looks like Sludge through and through. I think that face sculpt looks good. Those eyes are beautiful and blue. And you've got an okay amount of detail, almost like a G1 level, where it's not overly complicated. So overall, pretty good. And now coming on down, let's go ahead. Well, first, let's take a look at the top. See what's going on there. And then come down to the chest. So again, kind of the simplified look here in the chest, but it really works for him. He's just a big, broad-chested, beefy dude. And he's got a little bit of sculpt work right there in the middle. And coming on down. Not much to talk about here. As I say all the time, a little bit of paint I think would have gone a long way here as far as the overall look and kind of making some of these sculpted areas pop a little bit more. But the sculpt work is superb. It does look very nice. And then coming down to those legs, it all looks good. Big gold toes. I do have a little bit of paint missing on that tip of that toe right there. Not sure if that's something that I did or if it came that way, but it does seem to be systemic. So, opening up the inside of the leg here, even in there, that's pretty interesting. Some good stuff to look at. So I do like what's going on here with the mechanics, or those perceived mechanics. So no real hollow areas to talk about on this guy. And then coming over here, let me get that arm out of the way. Coming over here to the side, you've got that half tail sticking out there, but really nice looking all the way up. Looking up underneath him. Same thing, no hollow areas. The insides of his wings have some nice detail going on as well. So that's good to see. And then looking at those arms, we'll start with those big old fists. Not a lot going on, just big black fists. Looks good. It would have been nice, and I will probably reiterate this when he's in his alt mode. It would have been nice if these toes in the dinosaur mode would have been painted or a different color, something, just so they don't blend in as much. Well, you've got good detail there. And then coming up, well, let's take a look at the inside. Getting ahead of myself. You have that traditional line chevron kind of look that you see on a lot of the Autobots. And even up underneath, good job here of filling that area in, so job well done as far as that goes, the overall look. And then coming over here to the outside of that arm, you've got some pretty interesting sculpt work going on there. Overall, looks pretty good. And then coming around to the back, here he is with the full back view. And yeah, you're not mistaken. That is the entire front neck of a dinosaur hanging down his back. But I think that's par for the course when it comes to Sludge. So not a big deal at all. What they've done here actually looks pretty cool. So, all right, let's bring it in. And like I said, big old dinosaur head. And then the outsides of those wings, which we'll see in the alt mode as well. Looks really good. Even up underneath here, you can get a sneak peek of his dinosaur feet. And then the backs of those legs. All right, there's the underside. So you do have some effects ports down there if you want to take advantage of them. So yeah, I think overall look-wise on this guy, he's Sludge through and through. He's a big, beefy, leader class sized bot, and I like him. I like the way he looks. So let's go ahead and get into the articulation on this guy. So he's got his pluses, he's got his minuses, and we'll start like we always do, right up here at the head. And this is one of the minuses. So this is just on a flat joint. So you're not going to get any side to side here. You're not going to get any up and down. The only up and down that you get is because his head does not hook in. So you can get some up and you can get some down, but it's all happening at this hinge back here because the head doesn't lock in. All right, you can, however, go a full 360 if you choose to do so on that head. Coming over here to the shoulders, I'm going to push those out of the way. Coming over here to the shoulders, you can bring those up that far, and then you can go all the way around if you want to do that. You do have, it's kind of a double jointed elbow, but you don't really get a lot out of it. So really depending on your positioning, if you lock it in and bring that up, you can get a pretty good elbow bend out of it. If you have it too far forward, you're going to get about the same. So really no advantage here as far as that goes. This is really just for the dyno mode. And you do have a bicep rotation that goes all the way around. And then down here at the wrist, due to the transformation and because these don't lock in, the only thing that's holding these from collapsing, it's kind of interesting, is this little raised area on the outside of his hand. So part of the transformation is you flip these 180 degrees and then they're just free to fall right back in there. So the only thing that's keeping them from collapsing is when you have his hand in this position, you get a little bit of resistance there. So I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of that, but it is what it is. And then you do have the wrist rotation, which we just demonstrated. And then coming on down to that waist, you do get full waist rotation, so you can go all the way around with this guy. Just keep in mind, as you rotate him around, you may run into things, feet, dinosaur heads, that kind of stuff. So just be aware of that. And then coming on down here to the hips, he's got some pluses and minuses here. I'm going to talk about both. I know this is primarily articulation, but I am going to talk about a couple of the quality or design issues. I guess this would probably be the most appropriate place to talk about them. So let's start first with those splits. So you do get a nice deep split out of this guy. Not a full Van Damme, but you do get full splits, which is very nice. Now, part of my issue is these are just on friction pins. There's no ratchets right here, and it would have been nice to have had ratchets because I guarantee you over time, he's not going to be able to hold that leg up. There's just going to come a point because this leg is so heavy where this is going to fall down. So I'm a little bummed about that. Now, forward leg kick, they are on ratchets, and he can kick that far, which is nice. And rear kick, if you don't really care about him running into stuff, you can get him about that far. So that's nice to have the ratchets on the forward and the back. Just don't know why they couldn't have put some ratchets up in here instead of friction pins. All right, and then you do get thigh rotation, so you can go all the way around if you want to do that. Totally up to you. And now coming down to these knees. These are my single biggest issue on this guy. This is it's frustrating posing him. I'm just going to be honest. It's frustrating, and I think that this is either design or quality. These are ratcheted, so I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but they're very, very soft ratchets. So he can go that far forward with the knee and then that far back with the knee. But these ratchets are so shallow and so soft. You can see them right there. And they don't hold. With a figure this heavy, if I'm trying to adjust him or do anything like this, and I try to do any type of adjustment, he just wants to fall every time. They will not hold. So frustrating. Oh, it's almost detrimental to the figure. So what you end up having to do from a posing standpoint is you need to take these hips one click back, bring those knees one click forward, and you're just going to have to chicken leg the guy. He stands just fine then, mostly because of all the weight that he has going on. You can give those legs a little bit of a spread, but you can see just as I'm spreading him, he wants to just absolutely grr. So, yeah, you see what I'm talking about. This is so frustrating. So, I know we're talking about articulation, but this is also integral for posing. And it gets so frustrating to try to pose this guy because he's got so much mass up here that these soft little ratchet joints right here drive me absolutely bonkers. It's really, really bad. So, all that aside, moving on, let's go ahead and take a look at the feet. You're not really going to get anything on the feet except for the ankle tilt, and it is a pretty good amount of ankle tilt. I mean, you're going to get 90 degrees out of there. Would have been nice if they had some kind of a filler here, but I understand why they didn't, just simply because of the way he transforms. So, I guess if you wanted to get the legs out of the way, if you wanted to put him in a kneeling pose, you know, something like this, you could get that toe out of the way, you know, so that might give you a little bit of the ability to get that toe out of the way if you want to count that as articulation, but that's really up to you. But yeah, mostly all you're going to get is just that ankle tilt. But those knees drive me crazy. Really, really frustrating. So, all right, there you go. I'm going to leave him be for now. So now that we've got the details and the articulation out of the way, let's go ahead and throw his gun on him and take a look at his accessories from there and a little bit of fun with blast effects. Well, here he is fully accessorized with that one accessory and with what I believe is all of the blast effect ports in his bot mode. So they're not a lot, but you do get a couple of them that are pretty cool. You get them up here on the shoulder, and you get a couple down there in the feet, and then of course that gun really, really looks good with those blast effects in there, and I'm so happy that they made his gun blast effect compatible. It almost redeems a few other issues here. So, but yeah, overall looks on this guy, you know, with his accessory, with that gun, and with those blast effects, he's really cool. Great, great, great shelf presence on this guy. So I think you're very much going to enjoy looking at him on your shelf. Posing him, maybe not so much, but once you get him there, yeah, it's pretty cool. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get him into his alt mode, and we'll take a look at him there in his nice, really cool dinosaur mode. Yeah, I've got to give credit where credit's due. He looks really good in his dino mode, no doubt about it. Is he perfect? No, of course not. But for a mainline figure, I think they've done a really good job here. But let's go ahead and bring him in and take a look at his details in this mode. And we're going to start right up here with that gorgeous head sculpt. Man, that looks good. That gold and those blue eyes. Got that big red Autobot symbol up there. And he's got those golden teeth. You do have a little bit of detail in the mouth. So there you go. You've got some nice detail going on there. And of course you have your little fire spitter outer. And then up underneath. And then everywhere you look on this guy, he's just a wash in sculpt work. So every angle on this guy, there's something to look at. As I say quite often, and I know I do, additional paint applications would have gone a long way here just with all this sculpt work. It really would have made some stuff pop. But hey, if you have an artistic touch and you feel like painting your figure, I think you've got plenty to work with here. So moving on, we're taking a look at that silver. I'm not going to call it chrome. It's not quite chrome. It's just a really shiny silver paint application there. And then on those sides, he's got those big old toes. I would have liked to, at the very least, have seen the toes painted a different color. So, you know, I think that I feel like they could have at least gone that far for us. But you do get this stripe right here, so that's nice. And then you see a little bit of the red in the hips there, so helps break up that monotony. And then coming back here, we saw this when he was in his bot mode. It's always good to see it again in that alt mode. Everything back here looking really good. A little bit of that silver on the tip of the tail back there, and then you do have a little bit of that black stripe, so that all looks good. Now on my copy, unfortunately, my tail doesn't want to stay together. So I can squeeze, and I can squeeze there because this isn't quite perfect, and I can squeeze there. So if you see me squeezing, that's what's going on here. Hopefully yours doesn't have this issue, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It just annoys me. All right, and then coming around to this side, it's the exact same thing. No surprises here. Just looking good all the way around. You do have the addition of the screw holes for assembly on this side versus what you might see on this side over here. And then down to under, this is what you're working with. So just my tail won't go together. Stay. And there's what you're working with under there. You got a nice big hollow area. Now this is for the weapon storage. So you do have these two slots right here, and then you can just plug the weapon in right there. They're not very deep, so if you bring your weapon in, it's not the most secure. Try to do this on camera here. Plug it in. So it stores the weapon. It's just not the deepest thing, so it's really easy to take this weapon off. So, and you know, I guess it's good, but he doesn't look great when he's got a big old gold cannon sticking out the side. But yeah, Dino mode absolutely looks really good on this guy. Let's go over the articulation real quick. No major surprises here, but it's worth going over. So starting at that head, you can bring the head up that far. You can bring the head down that far. And you can open that jaw that much. And then, much to my surprise, you do have, it's tight, you do have, oops, I don't want to take you apart. You do have articulation right there. So you can turn his head. Now, you can go all the way around if you want, so you can see what's going on behind him. You can do a full 360 right there, which is really, really cool. I was not expecting that on this figure, so very nice to have that. And then coming down here, typical what you would see on the legs. You know, you're going to go back that far. You're going to go up that far if he wants to high-five somebody. And then you have a little bit of up, a little bit of down, and then you can twist these around all the way if you want to do that. On these back legs, you can essentially go all the way around if you want to. Just be careful not to run into stuff. And then you do have thigh rotation. So again, don't run into things. And because they're his shoulders, also in hips, you can have the incredible flying sludge. If you want to do that. And then you have a pretty good range of motion here, more than you're ever going to need in his Dino mode for the legs. So yeah, not too bad at all. The toes are fixed in both front and back, and then you get nothing at the tail unless you want to count this as articulation, and I don't. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's throw some effects on him and put his gun in the storage area, and we'll take a look at him from there. So when it comes to blast effects and accessories in this mode, it's not much, but it's enough to make this guy fun. So really you don't have a lot going on here that you can use in this mode for blast effects unless you want to give the illusion here that he's being shot simultaneously on both back hips. But you do have that blast effect in his mouth, and we see that coming around. And I bet you thought I was going to use orange fire. No. I'm using blue fire because I like it better. But I am using orange fire down here, so when you store his weapon, you do have access to the barrel there, and I guess you can get some belly shots on some people. So, but yeah, this dude looks really cool. With or without the effects, you know, anytime you can get fire coming out of the mouth of a dinosaur, take advantage of that opportunity for sure. But that's really it as far as the blast effects go and the accessories. So let's go ahead and move on to the comparisons, and we'll take a look at this guy in his alt mode against some other creatures from prehistoric eras. For our first alt mode creature comparison, this is the Titans Return Skull Cruncher, so you can see how those two guys look together. Moving on to our next comparison, here's the bot that started it all. This is my G1 Sludge. Next up, this is Sludge as he was presented to us from the Bayverse film Age of Extinction. And for our final comparison, this is a bit of a group shot. These are the Studio Series 86 Dinobots that we have so far, at least at the time of this recording. So of course you have Sludge on the left, in the middle is Leader Grimlock, and on the right is Slag, Slug, whatever they're calling him nowadays, this guy. That's going to do it for the alt mode comparisons, so let's get him back into his bot mode and we'll do some comparisons there. For our first bot mode comparison, here we see Sludge next to the Titans Return Skull Cruncher. Here he is next to my G1 Sludge, and you can see where a lot of that inspiration was drawn as far as the overall look. I think they did a pretty good job here of capturing all the G1 essence in the new guy, so job well done there. Moving along to our next comparison, here we see him next to the Voyager class Slag from Transformers Age of Extinction, and I need a quick correction here. In the alt mode I called him Sludge. He is Sludge, but for whatever reason for the movies they changed his name to Slag, so Sludge, there he is. Here he is next to the Studio Series 86 Hot Rod and Studio Series 86 Kup, just to give you a sense of scale. And for our final bot mode comparison, here we see Sludge with his fellow Studio Series 86 Dinobots, at least so far. In the middle is the leader class Grimlock, and on the right is the leader class Slug, aka Slag. So yeah, these guys are really turning out to be an awesome looking team. I think out of the three, he's still the weakest as far as posability, but man, these guys look really good together. That's going to do it for the bot mode comparisons, so let's go ahead and get into those final thoughts. Yeah, so this is one of those figures where you have to take the bad with the good, and there's a little bit of both here, but I think in the long run, the good wins. The good outweighs the bad, and I think that he's certainly a figure worth picking up and putting in your collection, but let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit, and we'll start with the overall aesthetics, the overall look of this figure. The bot mode looks really good. I really like the way he looks. He's big, beefy, bulky, everything that you would expect Sludge to be. The sculpt work is on point. I think that he could have benefited, as I've said many times in the past with other figures, I think he could have benefited with a little bit more paint to help some of that sculpt work pop. But what you get here in the bot mode is a really, really nice looking bot and good shelf presence. The alt mode looks really cool as well. I love that Dino mode, but I just feel like the tail should be a little bit longer. It just seems a little bit off of proportion. I can't put my finger exactly on what it is, but he does look really good in his alt mode. So I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 for aesthetics. I think for this price point, you don't get a whole lot better than what we have right here. Now, moving on to the articulation. You know, I'm going to score him a little bit higher than maybe I should, because I don't think he's limited on articulation. It really just comes down to those weak ratchet joints in those knees where I really have all my hard feelings, I guess. But starting up at the top, the head is limited in what you can do. I mean, you get a little bit of up and down, but it's because of that hinge in the back, because the head doesn't lock in. You don't get any side to side or the head tilt, I should say. But you can do it a full 360 if you want to. You don't really get anything useful in the feet. I mean, you can see in this pose that I have going on here, you can use it a little bit, but to get true usefulness as far as up down motion, you don't get a whole lot. But the articulation in the alt mode is pretty well done. I think everywhere else on this guy in the bot mode, you're not going to want for a lot. You get plenty of range of motion in all those other joints, so you're going to be pretty well off there. I just the feet and the head suffer a little bit in the bot mode, but the alt mode, as far as dinosaurs go, yeah, I mean, everything moves the way it should, and I'm pleasantly surprised by the fact that you can turn that head left and right in the alt mode as well. So articulation, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. Moving on to the accessories, I'm going to be kind of generous here as well, because this is the first time we've seen this mold, but you only get that gun. It's a really cool gun, and it's blast effect compatible, which is great, but that's it. This is a leader class. You're paying leader class prices for that. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't know if I'm fully bought in. And in particular, when you think about the other two Dinobots, Grimlock and Slug, we got the minifigs, whatever you want to call them, in the form of Wheelie and Spike, and you get nothing here with Sludge. So, I don't know, it just feels like a little bit of a ripoff on the accessories. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Moving on to quality, this is where I have a majority of my issues here. So, starting with the paint, as I discussed earlier, down here on the toes on both sides, I'm missing some paint. I can't say if that was me or if it came that way out of the box, but it's just something for you to watch out for. And then back here, I didn't really talk about it in the review because they are what they are, but these wings back here, the pin that holds them in, they just flop around loosely. It's the same situation that I have with my Grimlock. So I just think that it would have been nice to have had a little bit more friction in those so they didn't flop around as you were handling the figure. And then everything from the waist down just gives me fits. You know, as we talked about, those hips for the splits have the friction pins. I feel like they should have had ratchets there. The knee ratchets are entirely too weak. They just make it so difficult to pose this guy as you handle him. It's kind of a task. It takes the fun away in posing this guy because of those really cheap, weak knee ratchets that they put in there. So that's a huge disappointment. And then in the alt mode, as I showed, my tail just won't stay tabbed in. I've tried multiple times. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a tolerance issue or what. I don't know if it's just solely on my copy or if it's systemic across all of these. But my tail won't stay tabbed in. So really disappointed in the overall quality of this figure, especially in comparison to the other Dinobots. I'm only going to give him a 7 out of 10 here. And then taking us to our last bullet, which is overall value. He looks good. He really does. He looks good in both modes, and that shelf presence is just phenomenal. The transformation is actually trickier than you might think, but it's fun and it flows really well, so I don't have any issues as far as that. I actually kind of enjoy that. But I do feel overall that this figure, in comparison to Grimlock and Slug, that he's subpar. You know, I feel like the bar has gone down a little bit there, especially with the fact that, you know, you don't get the same things. You know, the leader class Dinobots come with a weapon. They come with a minifig. Well, except for him. So I think overall value on this guy, he's not up to par with the other two Dinobots. So I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 on overall value here. And I will say that I picked this guy up off the shelf at a Target in North America for $50 US. And man, I really hope this isn't the direction that we're going with the leader class figures, because I think that there are too many things that need improved on this figure. So I'm hoping for the next Dinobot release that they do a little bit better than they did on Slug. So with that 7 out of 10 overall value, that brings us to a grand total out of a possible 50 points. The Studio Series 86 Leader Class Sludge gets 38 out of 50, which puts him at 76%. That's kind of a disappointing score. I was really looking forward to this figure. I'm happy that I picked him up, but I just think with a few tweaks here and there, he could have been so much better, particularly if they could have done something with those knees. I certainly would have scored him higher on the quality. And if they could have done something else with the accessories. If you're only going to give us a gun, give us new blast effects. I know that's a commander class thing, but man, it really would have been nice if you could have given us something else there. So with all that being said, I'm going to give him a soft recommendation. I think that if you like the Dinobots, if you've collected the other two, this is a no-brainer. You're going to pick him up. Just buyer beware, know what you're getting into as far as those little annoyances go. So with that, that's going to wrap up the review. I hope you guys got some good information out of this. I hope you were entertained. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. And feel free to leave some comments if you want to. Love hearing back from you guys. So with that, that's going to wrap it up. So until we see you guys in the next review, take care.